Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, students, and welcome to tonight's webinar on Module 1, Apply Project Scope Management Techniques. My name is Tracy Hickey. I'm the Project Management Trainer here at Open Colleges. So I may have already connected with you through the Message Centre, but if I haven't, then I'm sure we will connect quite a bit over the course of your study journey over the next 12 or 18 months or so, depending on how long you are with us. Tonight's webinar is hopefully going to answer a lot of questions and give you a lot of confidence in how to go about getting started with your study online. So there will be time for questions during and after the webinar, so feel free to ask anything that you want to know, because I want this to be as beneficial as possible for you. But before we get into some things, I just want to quickly do some housekeeping just to make sure everyone is familiar with their webinar navigation. You'll see in the navigation panel there's a hand icon, so occasionally I'll just ask you to raise your hand just so I can just check a couple of things. Otherwise, if you've got any questions at all, you'll see the question panel and you can type in questions as we go, so that if anything I'm saying isn't making sense or you just want to clarify something, you can type in a question and I'll be able to answer that for you as we go through tonight's webinar. So I just want to make sure that everyone can see the screen and hear me okay. So if you can see and hear everything okay, if you could just either type yes, it's all good, or just raise your hand and let me know that everything is working as it should be. Just check to make sure we're all good. Otherwise, if there's any issues, just let me know. All right. So it looks like we are all okay for now, which is great. Tonight's webinar, just going to go through a few things. I want to just start by giving you a bit of a broad overview on what project management is, and then break it down to the key concepts that you'll be studying within this first module on managing scope, using the case study, some general tips for completing assessments, and then we're going to go into the actual scope assessment documents, and I'll show you what you need to complete on those and just some of the more sticky points, I guess, on there, things that you just might need to know just to give you the confidence in how to go about approaching those documents. And then, as I said, we'll have questions at the end as well if there's any further questions once we complete all of that information. And the other thing, just highlight before we get into things, just in case other students are still joining us, you're not alone when you're studying through Open Colleges. Sometimes I know it feels like that when you are studying by distance and you've worked all day and you've come home and you're sitting down at the end of a long day in front of your computer trying to do an assessment, and sometimes it can feel like you're a little bit alone, but you're not. There's a lot of the team there to support you. So I've just listed some of the team there. We've got our student support team that are available a little at 10 p.m. on weekdays, Sydney time, and also on the weekend. So you can call them on that number for anything administrative or anything that you need to just clarify if you're having problems uploading documents or downloading, or if you need to talk about your enrolment in any way. Student support are awesome for that. We also have the learning support team who do daily webinars on open space. So we won't be going through open space itself on this particular webinar, and that's what the learning support team do on their webinars. They'll go through and walk through where to download assessments and where you find all the other information. The only thing I will do tonight on this webinar is I will show you where the additional resources folder is, just in case you're not sure where to find the case study information. But their webinars are there. You can go to that link and register for a webinar at a day and time that suits you. They also do one-on-one appointments where they can set up study plans. They can help you with any other study tips and techniques that you might need. So if you're ever feeling like you're not quite sure where you're heading, the learning support team are great to connect with as well. You also have fellow students. So under the contacts in your message center, you will find some study buddies who are students that are at a similar stage of the course with you. So you might like to connect with some of those students to either discuss things with or keep each other accountable, that kind of thing. So feel free to reach out to fellow students. Then you have your academic staff here at Open Colleges. So we have 3 assessors that will be assessing your work throughout this particular course: Lindsay Mitchell, Edgar Yu, and Jim Johnson. So these our assessors work external to the college. They all work in the industry, so they're all current in what they are assessing, and so they will mark your assessments as you submit them. If you have questions about how to complete your assessments, or you're not sure what's required, or any of the learning materials, or if you get feedback back from one of the assessors that you're not quite sure what it means or how you need to adjust your assessments, any of those things, I'm here to assist you with that. So you can contact me anytime through the message center. Just send me a message and let me know what module, what assessment, or what area you're having problems with and what your questions are, and I will do my best to help to clarify or explain where you need to head or what you need to do. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm full-time with the college, so I'm here as your first point of contact for anything academic. Anything administrative, you would go to student support. So there's just some key information. But in saying that, I love distance education. I think you'll find that it's a good way to be able to maintain work, family, other commitments that you have in life, and be able to fit your study around what you're used to doing. I personally have done most of my study by distance. I'm just about to finish in the next couple of months my MBA, which I have done completely by distance. So there's a lot of benefits in studying by distance. But if you do get stuck or you're feeling alone, reach out to one of us. All right, let's get into the content of tonight. Are we all going okay so far? Just raise your hand if everything is making sense so far and we're ready to move on. Yep, very awesome. Okay, so project management. Project management overall is a really amazing course. It's a really diverse course, and through it you'll learn a lot of different skills that you can apply to a lot of different industries. I know students will often start off in a particular industry, but life sometimes takes us through a number of different career paths, and project management is the skills that you learn with this. You can transfer to a number of different industries and a number of different companies that you might move between. So it's a really good course to have under your belt. Projects are used in a lot of organizations today. There used to be a time when projects were particularly linked to infrastructure type projects, construction, mining. More recently, IT use a lot of projects in there, but more and more other industries are also using project management. So, or recognizing project management as the basis of what they do. So myself, I've come from more of a not-for-profit events, marketing type background. So all of the projects that I've worked with are more in those sort of areas, which are quite different, but the same principles apply, and that's why it's such a great course, because you can apply it to all sorts of different jobs. And a lot more companies are using projects to help them achieve their strategic objectives. So there might be new opportunity or a demand in a particular area where a project can launch something new, a new product or a new service, or there might be a change that's needed because of either technology or legal requirements, or today environmental concerns is a big reason why things get changed. So projects are often used to bring about change in an organization as well. And project management is simply applying all of the skills and knowledge that you'll learn in the course to that particular project requirements to make sure that at the end of the day we meet the needs of the stakeholders and we deliver what we are expected to deliver. So it's a really great course to study. A project is not ordinary daily work, and I just want to point that out, particularly for when you come to your assessments and things like that. A project always has a defined beginning and a defined end, and there's a finite set of resources. So you'll have a set budget, you'll have certain resources that you can use, etc. So just a couple of examples. If you're taking meeting notes or doing anything administrative in an office, that's just routine repetitive work, where writing a book would be considered a project. The last one there, if you're manufacturing an Apple iPod or any other product, the routine manufacture of it is just an operational work, that operational function within the organization, where if you were to design a new media player or a new product, then that would be considered a project. So anytime you're looking at project management, you're always looking at something that has a defined beginning and a defined end. And that's what we call the project life cycle. Every project, regardless of the size, goes through the project life cycle. So you can see here, there's an initiation stage, or it might be the concept stage, where we are looking at all the high-level aspects of the project, and it's being defined and progressing. So we always start off with that concept stage where the project is initiated and it's approved, so we can get the approval to move forward with our planning. The second stage is the planning, which is a massively important part. We don't plan correctly, we run into all sorts of issues once we get into the work of the project. But in the planning, we look at things like developing up our schedule and our budget, looking at our resources, analysing risks, working out our quality and procurement needs, and all those sort of things. So the planning is a really important stage. Sometimes you'll hear that called the development stage or the approval stage of the project. But it's where we sit down and work out exactly what we're going to be doing, how we're going to be doing it, and what our budget and our schedule and our resources look like. Then we move into the work of the project, which is the execution stage. You'll often sometimes hear that called the delivery stage or the implementation stage. Different organisations and industries will use different terminology, but it's basically when the work gets done. So during that time, we are doing the work, and we're also monitoring and controlling everything that we do. And you'll see that dotted line there on the diagram. So with that, we have all of our quality control. We're managing our teams, our stakeholders, any contracts. We're looking at what is on track and what's not on track. And anytime there's a change needed, we are putting that through the formal change control process. And so change management is a really important part to make sure that we are sticking to what we should be doing and managing those changes correctly so that we are adjusting things. And then eventually the project will come to an end, which will be the closing stage, the finalisation or the completion stage of the project, where we are handing over our service or product deliverables to the client. At the end of it, we will be doing all of our final reporting, doing our lessons learned, looking at what worked, what didn't, etc. So you'll see the project life cycle follows through, and this is actually in your textbook, just inside the front cover if you want to have a look at it. By the way, all the handouts, all these slides are available under the handouts tab there if you want to download those as well, just for your reference. But this particular diagram is in the textbook as well. So that's the project life cycle, and I wanted to just highlight that because when you complete your assessments, the assessments in the course are very practical. So you'll be completing practical documentation as if you were on a real job, and depending on what the requirement is, you'll be at one of these stages within the project. So it's important to recognize whereabouts, what stage of the project am I in, and then answer the questions or complete those documents from that perspective. So some of them, particularly the first written assessment that you'll be doing in each module, will be more around that planning stage of the project. So you'll be doing, scope management plan documents, and you'll be developing up your schedules and doing your budgets and things like that. So you'll be doing a lot of that planning stage. So just make sure when you are planning, you're at the beginning of the project, so you don't know what actually happens in the project at that stage. But when you come to the last written assessment, that'll usually be within the that executing closing stage of the project. So that's where you might be doing change requests or doing lessons learned and having discussions on, doing project reports and that kind of thing. So keep in mind where you are in the project when you are completing your assessments, and it will help you with the kind of information that you need to put into that. So the first module that we study and the first area that we look at is scope. And scope is a really important part of the project because it really does set the foundation for everything else, and hence that's why it's the first thing that we study. So within scope, we are gathering all of our requirements for the project. So we need to find out exactly what is required and then defining that very clearly in our scope management plan. You might see a scope statement or a scope of works in your workplace, but it's documents where you are defining very clearly what it is that we are doing, what's included within this job and what's not included. From that definition, we can then develop up our work breakdown structure where we break down the project into all the different aspects of the job so that we make sure we're not missing any parts of what's required. And this is critical because it's from our work breakdown structure that we then develop our schedule, because for each part of the job we're able to estimate how long it's going to take, what resources we're going to need, how much it's going to cost, and then they filter through into all of our resource planning, developing our schedule, developing our budget. So if we miss a section of the project in the scope definition stage and we don't get it into our work breakdown structure, then later on when we realize it's missing, we're going to not have scheduled it, we're not going to have budgeted for it, etc. So the scope management is a really important part to get that very clearly defined, exactly what we're doing. And then when the work starts, we've got to monitor and control everything to make sure we're not getting into scope creep and we're not starting to add extra things into the project that we haven't been approved or have the resources to do. And if we do find there's a change needed, which does come up regularly in projects, that we put them through the proper change management process. So we use those change order forms or change requests to formally get it authorized. And then at the end, we'll close the project as we saw before, and we'll do our lessons learned and hand over whatever it is that we've been doing. So scope covers all of those aspects. And you'll see it there. So it basically covers all of the features and the functionality, the work of the project. The other two areas that are really important that feed from that, as I said, is the schedule and the resources. And this is called our triple constraints or the iron triangle. And it's because these three areas are always the three areas that you'll be finding you've got to make your decisions in. And if you make a change in one of the areas, it's going to impact the other areas. So if we increase scope, more than likely, in most cases, it will increase the schedule and it will probably increase the budget as well. If we find we're running behind schedule, then we might need more money to throw into it to get extra resources on the job to get it delivered in time and that kind of thing. So they all impact each other, and quality is in the center because no matter what decisions we are making in those other areas, we've got to make sure that we are maintaining the quality that is required and we're not starting to compromise and if we take shortcuts so that our quality is compromised at the end and we don't meet our quality requirements. So it's always a battle, and one of the key things when you are involved in the project is to find out where the priorities are. Where do you have flexibility within these three areas to move, because it will help make the decisions easier. If you are looking at a project, say, that is like a research and development, developing a new drug to treat a new disease or something like that, there's going to be very stringent tests that it's going to have to pass before it'll ever be released to market. So the scope is going to be critical, and it's going to have to take as long as it needs and as much money as it needs until that drug passes all the tests and everything has been done and ticked off before it will ever be released to market. So in those cases, scope is really important. Same with anything with very high, legal or safety requirements and things like that. Scope is going to be very important. With what I've done with a lot of events, schedule is the most important thing. So no matter what, if you are running behind on schedule, you've got to do whatever you can, throw more money at it or reduce down what you're trying to deliver to make sure that you deliver on time, because you don't have the flexibility to just delay an event by a week just because you're running a bit late. Tickets have been sold, it's been promoted. So in those cases, the schedule is the most important part. In other areas, it's the resources. The budget might be fixed and you might not have any flexibility to move on that budget. So you've got to make decisions in the other two areas accordingly. So I think understanding your particular project and what the priorities are and what's important is really important there to understand. So that's something that's really key there. All right, so that's just the end of that particular section. I want to go now into the case study for the assessments and looking at the particular case study, but we've just had a question come through, so I'll just look at that. The question is this webinar available to watch or listen to at a later date? Yes, it will be. I'm actually recording the webinar, so I will upload that to YouTube and I'll be able to send the link out to everybody probably tomorrow or the next day, whenever it's uploaded to YouTube. I can send out the link and you'll have the whole webinar to refer back to if you need to. So yes, it will be. Alrighty, so let's have a look at the case study. When you go through the assessments, the case study that you'll be using is a computer equipment update for Thomas and Brian Brown Proprietary Limited. So this case study will build all the way through the course. So you'll start with scope and develop up your work breakdown structure and everything for this particular project here. And then this will carry through into time and cost and human resources, and all the other parts of the modules will all build from this particular one. So you'll, like you would in a real project, you will look at all the different aspects of the project based on whatever module you're studying at the time. So this particular project, as I said, is the computer equipment upgrade. It's used right throughout the course. So take time at the beginning to fully understand the organisation and the project, because the more you can imagine yourself working within this organisation and with these people that are part of it, the easier you'll find it to apply yourself into that particular scenario. And the benefits of using a case study is that all your background information is provided in the additional resources folder, which I will show you where that is shortly, just in case there's anyone who hasn't seen that. Whenever there are any scenarios, if you've got to discuss any conflicts or issues, whenever you are doing any performance reviews, that kind of thing, all the information that you need for your role play partner and to answer those particular questions is all provided for you. And it also gives you a chance to kind of work within a project that you may not be familiar with. So when we are looking at completing your assessments, let's go through some general ones. Now these tips will apply right throughout the modules. Like I said with the case study, with the assessments, also make sure that you've taken time to go through all the learning content and the concepts. So make sure you've got a good understanding of what they're asking before you launch into the assessment tasks. So there's videos to watch, there's the textbook, there's links to journal articles. Take whatever time you need to really understand what that module is all about before you go into your assessments, and it'll give you a really good foundation. Because as I said, everything builds, so as you go through, you're building on your knowledge and it will really help you. You will see there are learning activities as you go through the modules. These learning activities allow you to practice what you are learning. So they're not assessed, they're not looked at by any assessors or anything like that. They just give you a chance to put some things into practice, and you can upload your responses or whatever into open space and you'll see other students have done the same thing. So it gives a chance for you to see how other students have answered questions or how they have approached it. So it's a way to kind of glean from each other as students. They're not compulsory because they're not part of your formal assessment. So if you are very familiar with a particular concept, then they're not compulsory to do. But a lot of students do find that they really do help aid your understanding a lot. So they're there as an added benefit for you. So use them as you need to. You will see also that each of the sections have topic numbers, and that's how you can refer to different parts of the content within that module. And in some of the assessments, you are referred back to certain topics to guide, to assist you. So what I've said there is use them as a guide. Occasionally there are a few that have a wrong number in them, so we try to pick those up and correct them. Often it's, when I hear from a student that a particular number is incorrect, we'll correct it. But they, if you're talking about doing a change request, then you're going to be going to the section within the learning on change control. So usually you can find where it is anywhere, and the numbers are always pretty close. The biggest thing is that often the module number is missing from the front of the references. So if you're in an assessment that says to refer to topic 2.4 and you are in scope, which is module 1, then you just need to put that module number in front, 1, so it would be 1.2.4 is where you would find the information. So you will never be sent to another module to help you answer the questions that you are doing within an assessment. So if it looks like the module number is missing from the front, just pop it in front, and I think you'll find what you're looking for a lot easier. We are aiming to fix all of that next year, but most of the time you'll find your way around pretty simply, particularly if you've taken the time, as I said, to go through the learning content thoroughly. Most of the time you'll be fine. There are 3 assessments. The first assessment is a quiz, and it's a multiple choice self-marking quiz. So you need to score 80% or higher to pass. If you don't score 80% on your first attempt, it's not a problem. You just need to wait 24 hours and then it will let you log back in and you can have a second attempt. So you can have as many attempts as you need to until you score 80% or higher. And when you go in for your second attempt, you only need to adjust the answers that you got either incorrect or partially correct on your previous attempt. And there'll be a little navigation panel with all the question numbers. The ones that you got correct will be highlighted as green. So it's only anything that's red that you got incorrect or yellow that was partially correct that you need to change those answers and then resubmit, and it will give you your new score. So you need to get 80% or higher. And sometimes if it's a reattempt, your grades may take up to 24 hours to update. So if things don't look right after 24 hours, that's when you can contact student support and they can have a look into it for you. But that's the first assessment, is the quiz. Then there are 2 written assessments per module. And as I said, we don't accept drafts because you also have unlimited attempts of your written assessments. So what I would suggest is do your best. If you're really stuck, let me know and I can help you with how to approach that particular assessment. But otherwise, do your best attempt at it and then submit it. And you'll either be on the right track and you'll come back with a grade from either pass, credit, distinction or high distinction. Otherwise, if you need more information or you're not quite on the right track in certain parts, you will get that sent back to you by the assessor with feedback and with some guidance on what you need to adjust and where you need to sort of add more details or whatever. So you'll get some formal feedback. You can then make those adjustments and you can resubmit your work a second time for grading. And once again, if it needs to come back a third time, then you'll get feedback further to that, etc. So you might find some assessments go back and forth a few times, and that's perfectly normal and quite okay. So you have unlimited attempts on all of your assessments. Use the assessment document that you download to complete your answers on, and try and keep as much as possible on that one document. So if there's templates, it's always a good idea to use the templates because it makes sure that you've actually included everything that you need to include. And we say to keep it on the one document where you can, because it makes it easier for you to make sure that you've actually answered all parts of the assessment, and it also makes it a lot easier for the assessor to see what the question was and then what your response is. So it's a lot quicker turnaround if it's all there. Sometimes you will need to upload more than one document if you've used an Excel spreadsheet or if you've got an audio file, etc. So that's fine, but try and keep it as concise, I guess, as you can. You will also see there's a word count, so use that as a guide. It's particularly applicable to where it asks you to write an email or if it asks you to write a couple of paragraphs on how you might do things differently, etc. They are probably the biggest areas where the word count is important, but the word count will basically just help you know roughly the kind of amount of information that you need to include. But just use it as a guide. Don't get too caught up on it because you'll always get feedback if you're going into too much detail or if you don't have enough. So use it as a guide, as I said, but don't stress too much. And then before you submit, just make sure you've always included your student name and number on the first page, make sure you've completed all parts, and proofread your work. Now you will see that in some of the assessments, there's an audio recording. This is important because one of the key skills for a project manager is to be able to communicate when they are in a project. You've got to be able to negotiate and work with people and have people want to work with you. So because we are by distance, the only way we can assess communication skills is through recordings. But it doesn't need to be a real life situation. Obviously, you're using a case study, so you can role play it with a friend, a family member, or a work colleague. What I would suggest is that you give them the briefing notes, and you can give them a script if it's easier. Either give them some key points for them to ask or say, or give them a script. But it's always best if you can yourself ad-lib as much as you can. Maybe just have a few bullet points for yourself and then just talk as if it's a normal work conversation. It just makes it flow a lot more realistically and makes it, gives it a flow to the conversation rather than everybody reading off a script, which doesn't really show your ability to communicate effectively. So that would be my point to that. Most of them are only 5 to 10 minutes, so it's important that you stay close to that length. So they're not long and they don't generally take too long to record. There are a couple of options for recording. One is to either just use the camera on your phone, record as a video, and you can just put it face down on the desk or something like that, or you can use the voice memo app. But we do also have a recording function in OpenSpace that you can use, and it will record straight into OpenSpace. If you don't like it, you can re-record, you can save it, but then you're able to upload it directly from there as part of your submission. So it's really, really easy to use, and the students that are using the online recording function are finding it really straightforward. So that's another option for you. And then you just upload that audio file along with your Word documents. Just make sure you have your consent form signed as well, because that's another important part. But yeah, don't stress too much about the audio recordings. They don't need to be complicated. They don't need to be long. And the main thing is, can you communicate? Can you ask questions? Can you listen? That sort of thing. So yeah, don't let this be a stress point. They're meant to be a bit of fun and easy to do. So that's your audio recordings. As I said, the written assessments are very practical. So you don't need to do formal academic writing or any in-text referencing. As such, you're basically just completing documents like they are business documents. So format them, write them up as if you would for work, and that's all that's really required. It is important for you to understand your role in the assessments. So when you are completing your assessments, your role is to assist the project manager as part of the project team. So when you are completing your assessments, think of yourself as part of a project team, and you're just helping to create documents that you're going to be providing to the project manager. So that's important. As I said, there's 2 written assessments. The O2 one has 2 parts, which is completed during that initiation planning phase of the project. Assessment O3 also has 2 parts, which includes an audio discussion, and that's completed during the implementation phase of the project. So that covers the I guess this part of the webinar. What I'm going to do next is switch over live to the actual documents that you will download, where you will download them and go through the 2 assessment documents. But before I do, are there any questions on anything we've covered so far? If there is, just type it in now. Otherwise, if you're ready to move on and get into the actual assessment documents, just raise your hand and I'll know that we're all good to move forward. All right, looks like we're good to move on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is bring up a couple of things that I want to show you. First thing I'm going to do is just show you in OpenSpace. When you log in, yours will look slightly different messaging here, but you've got all your dashboard part here. You've got your navigation menu down the side. So this is module 1 where you're going into scope. When you are going into, and obviously when you click on here, you've got all the learning materials, and when you scroll down to the bottom, you've got your quiz and your 2 written reports where you can download your assessments, and this is also where you will upload your assessments. But this little one here, which is this little icon that's got like a folder or book on it, this is the additional resources folder. And when you click on here, this will open up all of the additional resources that you need for the main projects, for your main assessments. So you'll see them all in here. And most of them are listed what module number they're also for, 3, 4, 6, etc. So this is the main case study document. So this is the one that you're going to want to download to begin with, to have a look at. But anytime you're doing your assessments and it says to refer to the additional resources folder, this is where you come. So download this document, and it's going to look like this. So this is the background case study. So what I would suggest is download this document and then highlight all of the key information that's in here. It'll give you all the background. It'll say that this company has been in business for 17 years. Thomas and Brian Brown are the owners of the company. They provide warehousing services. Many of the workers have been employed since the organisation started. Therefore, the culture is very resistant to change. Now, that's important to know for when you're completing your first assessment. And it also gives you an indication of why this project's in place. It says here the company has not updated software for a long time, nor have they updated their computer equipment. But now they want to put in some new software that's no longer compatible, so by default they now have to update all of their computers so that they are then down the track able to upload new software. Then we get into some of the key information. So the purpose, we'd like to update all of the computers used in the office so that software can be implemented later in the year. We know the budget is $400,000, so that's important, and there's the breakdown of the departments. It also says Thomas has appointed Caitlin Murray to be the project manager, so that's who you're going to be reporting to and writing to when she's the project manager. It says the project starts 2 weeks from today, so when you complete your first assessment, just start your dates for the project 2 weeks from when you are completing that document, and that will be your beginning of your particular project. And it needs to be completed in 7 months. So they're all the key sort of information that I would highlight. Then you come down to the project tasks. Now this is a really good foundation for your work breakdown structure because it will give you the major tasks, and then what you can do is underneath each of these just break down what is required to, identifying preferred suppliers of the equipment, for example. So when you're doing your work breakdown structure and you're looking at doing, identifying your suppliers, you might research your suppliers and then select your suppliers as subtasks underneath that, etc. So this is a great place to come to when you are completing your work breakdown structure. Don't forget also as part of that you've got to do all your closing and things like that. So make sure you've got a closing stage of your work breakdown structure as well. Then it gives you a bit of outcomes of a feasibility study. Once again, it highlights that employees may demonstrate resistance to this particular change of equipment, etc. And it's got some other information there that you can read. Then you've got your procedures, and it particularly highlights your change management procedure. So when you are looking at your scope control process and how you are going to control scope, this gives you the steps that you need to go through in order to have a change authorized. So keep this in mind for when you come to your scope control and identifying what those steps are. And it goes into a lot more detail on that from there. So get familiar with this, really understand everything that's going on and imagine this company, and then you're ready to start your assessments. So when you download your assessment documents, the first one you download will be your O2 document. And this is what I said, when you download this particular document, save it onto your own computer and rename the file name. And it tells you further down in this document how to rename your files. But this is where make sure you put your name and number on this first page so that it's clearly marked as your work. When you come down through the document, it will just overview the 3 assessments overall. It also gives you the file name extension and how to name your files. So make sure you follow that. Keep keep a copy of all your assessments before you submit, all that kind of things. So that's all your background information. But this is where it'll come to this particular assessment and what is required. So you can see it's got two parts. Part A is completing a scope management plan. Part B is writing an email. So yeah, got email and a scope management plan. So it's not too complicated, this particular assessment. Once you know the two parts of the assessment, the next part of the document will then break that down a little bit further and give you exactly what is required. So for part A, it'll say complete a scope management plan. It'll give you the bullet points of what you need to include in that, and it will even let you know what part of that case study document that we just looked at you need to look at to help you complete that particular part. And it will also say here, review topics 2.1 to 2.4. And as I mentioned before, you're in module 1, so make sure you add 1. So it'll be 1.2.1 to 1.2.4. And it says to use Appendix 1. So when we come on down, you'll see Appendix 1, you've got a template. So all you need to do is go to that case study document, put in the project name, the project manager, the start date, all of that we just talked about that you'll get from that case study. Bit of a background information, what are the objectives, what are we wanting to deliver on this particular project. So all of this information you'll get out of that case study document, and put a bit of background into all of that. When it comes to the deliverables, you'll be looking at, not only the computers, because obviously we're upgrading the computer systems, but, we also need to make sure that we are training the staff on the new computers and things like that. So you can add a few deliverables in there. Do your work breakdown structure. Explain that change process, those steps that you need to go through if you are a change is required, and what are some of the obstacles you might come across. So think about the employees and some of their resistance and things like that, and pop that in there. So you're just going to basically be completing these documents prepared by yourself and the date. And once you've completed all of that relevant information out of the case study, then that's your scope management plan completed, and you'll have met all those requirements. Then you'll come down to part B, which is the approval email. Prepare an email that you're sending to Thomas Brown to request his approval for the project. So that's just a basic email that you would write, addressed to Thomas, letting him know that you're attaching the scope management plan for him to look at and approve, and asking him to come back to you with his approval, or if he's got any questions to let you know, etc. So just a fairly standard email. As it says, there should be no more than 200 words. So it gives you a bit of an idea of how long that should be. And you can type, what I would do is I would type that email under here. So I would complete this document, and then I would come onto the same document and just tab to the next page and put your email onto here. And that way it's all on the one document. You've completed both parts. The assessor can clearly see the two parts that you've completed, and they also can see what the questions were. So it makes it a really nice, quick turnaround. So that's it for the first written assessment, those two parts. And as you can see, it's very practical, something that you would do in real life. Then when we come to the last written assessment, same thing, download the document, save it with your new extension number, add your name and number to the front. Scroll on down, you'll see that it also has two parts. The first one is completing a project change order form because there's a scope amendment that's needed. And the second part is a telephone phone call to the project manager to discuss the expectations. When you come down to part A, this is where I was saying you'll be given all the background information. So you're given the problem and what's happened. And it's saying that they've now decided they're going to lease the computers from this particular company. Gives you all of the new information, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, etc. So you can look at and see, is this going to work within what's been asked? Then you're going to complete the order form. Once again, template is provided. So fill in all of the main details. What is the change request? The fact that you are now wanting to lease the computers from this new company, bit of a reason why. And then you're going to say, is this change, what impact is it going to have on the quality, the schedule, and the cost? Is it going to have a positive effect? If so, put a little cross or mark in the box. If it's going to have a negative effect, then mark it in the negative column. And then how much of an effect is it going to have? Is it going to be a high impact, medium impact, or low impact? So once again, you put a little check in it. If something is going to fall within budget, then it's going to be positive because it's within budget. But if something is going to delay the schedule, it would be a negative effect, etc. And then a little bit of a description about what that's going to look like. So you are assessing with this change, what impact is that going to have? And then who do you need to communicate with? Who do you need to talk to within the company, and who do you need to talk to with outside the company? You might need to talk to the new suppliers. You might need to communicate to the rest of the project team, etc. So listing out who they all are and completing in the authorization information. Then it's going to go into part B, where we've now implemented it, and it gives you the problems. The computers have arrived, they're not working properly, the employees are complaining they won't turn on, some screens are flickering, etc. So you've got all these issues. So now you're going to phone Caitlin Murray, who's the project manager, to discuss these issues. And it will also come down here and it will say the phone conversation should be 5 minutes long, explain the issues, and provide your suggestions for improving the scope management practices. So find a friend or family member who will play the role of Caitlin Murray. You'll phone them to say this is all what's going on, explain some of the problems, and so this is how I think we could do things better in the future. So you'll be recording that, save it, upload it, and that's the O3 written assessment done. So you'll end up submitting this document with this form completed. You will have there's the briefing notes for that audio call. They will also sign the consent form, and you'll upload this document, plus you'll also upload the audio file. And then that's your 2 scope assessments completed. So as you can see, very practical. They don't take massive amount of time to complete, but it is important that you understand why you are completing them, so that when you move on into the next assessments, you've got a really good foundation of everything that's happened there. All right, so that is the end of this particular webinar. That's everything that I sort of wanted to come through. Are there any other questions from what we have gone through? As I said before, I will email a copy of this out to you so you can go back through it again afterwards. But if there's any other questions, let me know. The other option is I'm always available through Message Centre. So, you might not be up to your assessments just yet. So in another week or so when you are working on them, you might come across something and you've got a question then. So feel free to send me any feedback or ask me any questions just by sending me a message through the Message Centre. Over the Christmas break, we are closing down to a more smaller staff, I guess, over the Christmas week between Christmas and New Year. Student support will be available throughout the time. I will be checking my messages periodically, so like every 3 days or something, I'll just log in and just double check to see if anyone needs any urgent help. Technically, I'm off, but I will be checking any of my messages during that time, and the assessors will still be marking assessments right throughout that time as well. So hopefully you'll still be able to progress quite well through that whole time, and there won't be too much disruption. But feel free to send me any messages, let me know what's happening. And it looks like we haven't got any more questions come through, so I'll wrap it up there, and thank you for attending. And as I said, keep in touch, and I'll send this out to you all in the next day or so. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night, and thank you for joining me, and enjoy the study. I'm looking forward to it, doing the journey with you. All right, good night everyone.